It's Just Business with Steve Thomas and your host, Chris Larry. And welcome back to another episode of It's Just Business. I am not your regular host, Chris Larry, despite what the intro said. I am Steve Thomas. Chris abandoned us this weekend, unfortunately. He's moving, I believe. But thankfully, we have our regular backup, Alex Zeese. How are you, Alex?
I'm good. Do we know, is Chris moving from the city back into the woods or from the woods back into the city?
I think it's the city to the city.
I'll
tell you, I know what it is. I'll tell you off the air what's going on.
Okay.
By the way, this is It's Just Business. If I didn't say, this is the show where, despite the fact that Alex and I are both on this and the other show, which is the Hogstide, this is the show where we talk about all things sports business, sports media, sports law, anything that's going on behind the scenes in sports. Right. That is what the purpose of this show is.
Yes.
So
yes.
We are not here to talk about the Cincinnati Bengals.
No, thank goodness.
Yeah.
Although I might mention them at some point, just because, you know.
See, we're recording this on a Saturday, so we don't know what's going to happen in the game, and the show will be published after the game. So perhaps we can revise our predictions or something and see how dumb we sound.
I'm not going to do that part. But when it comes to business, the Cincinnati Bengals are kind of like the Barney Fife of the NFL.
Yeah,
so.
they're the anti-smart.
Yeah.
Not that Washington is, on the leading cutting edge.
No, we're
business.
With the stories about Washington that came out this week, and their off the field issues and this lawsuit, they're in that Cincinnati Bengals territory now. So
yeah, but unfortunately, this is our first topic for today. Actually,
smooth transition.
Yeah, the just incredible mess that is going on with the Washington Redskins / Washington football team / acronyms that I refuse to say because they're too dumb. And by the way, Hollywood needs to make a movie out of this. It would be a perfect, it would be a perfect drama, corporate drama, I think. So here's what's going on. We talked, 6 months ago, maybe, on this show about the craziness going on right now with the defamation lawsuit that Dan Snyder has filed in India.
Right.
And the reason it's filed in India, to catch everybody up, is there's a company called, I'm going to pronounce it as Meow. It's MEAWW, which runs a sleazy gossip website. This sleazy gossip website, right before the season started, published an article claiming that Dan Snyder was linked to Jeffrey Epstein, and it implied, or didn't so much imply, but overtly stated that Snyder was involved in trafficking of children. Teenage sex slaves.
Yes. I don't care how much you don't like Dan Snyder. You don't accuse somebody of that.
Yeah, awful.
Unless it's true, then go ahead. But
unless it's true, but I highly, highly doubt. As crummy of a businessman that Dan Snyder appears to be, there's no reason to suspect he's involved in just awfulness like that. And his name is, just to be clear, his name has never come up in any of the Epstein stuff ever.
Right.
It's just this, and it's not an accident that it's some Indian website, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I mean that they're halfway across the globe, and they're not involved in the Epstein mess at all. So somebody fed them all the stories.
Well, now, and it's also, I'm sure the laws are different there and a little more lax in some ways. And
well, no, because I did read the whole petition in the Indian court, which is 185 pages long, and it's in English, thankfully. And it's the defamation criteria are largely the same.
Oh, really?
If even more favorable in terms of some of the discovery and stuff that they're letting Snyder do in India. It's they have been allowed to really dig into some stuff in India. So it's actually, So kudos to the Indian defamation laws. So the reason why this is a story here today is there's lots that's gone on this week in particular, or in the past 2 weeks, in this case, and certainly since we last talked about it.
Two big things, too.
Yeah. So the one big thing is the sale of the minority shares, which we're going to get to, but I want to start with the defamation stuff. Now, to be clear, here's what's happened. You might have read a lot about there being multiple lawsuits around the country, meaning the United States. All of these lawsuits are really just discovery requests that are in support of the Indian lawsuit. So there's 4 of them total. One of them we talked about, so we're going to skip over that one. The first one is a discovery suit filed in Virginia against somebody named Mary Blair. Mary Blair was an employee of the team 3 years ago and is connected to Dwight Schrute because she's living in a house or an apartment complex or or a condo or something.
Complex, yeah.
Yeah, owned by Dwight Schrute's company.
Right.
And so Snyder suspects, and there's been a bunch of phone calls and stuff she's made, so Snyder suspects that she was one of the people feeding the Indian website dirt about Snyder. So that's that one.
Or she was feeding Char's family, who was then giving...
Right, there you go. That's better said. Right.
Yeah.
And so the next one, which is also not that interesting, is a discovery suit in California that is going after some of the principles behind this Meow company in India. And then there's an ad agency in Texas called the Ardent Group. So there's another one in Texas. The one that's the most interesting, which we want to talk about, Alex, is there's a discovery suit in Colorado involving a company called the Friday Night Lights, LLC.
Right,
and this company is connected to, guess who? Jessica McLuhan. So the allegation here in the discovery suit is that there were many, many calls between from McLuhan and the team, between the McLuhan and into the team right before the lawsuit came out. So Snyder suspects that Jessica McLuhan has been feeding people information about Snyder that went into the Indian website story. So your general thoughts about this Jessica McLuhan stuff, Alex?
Well, it's no secret that she has some open contempt for the team. You and I were talking a little bit about that beforehand. And I think on a human level, you can understand why she would hate the Redskins after they, drug her husband behind a wheelbarrow, basically.
And let it be said here, not to interrupt you, but the Hogsty got fed rumors well before any of it came public about Scott McLuhan's drinking that were purportedly from inside the building. And so it became clear afterwards that those rumors were being fed out intentionally to smear him. That was our sort of view of it. We didn't publicize it at the time because we're not Chad Ryan. We don't do that, and we didn't have backup, evidence of it.
Let me also say, one of the guys who was feeding us that, he's kind of known amongst the weird Redskins underbelly fan group as you can't necessarily trust him. Some people do, some people don't. He's been tied to some really strange stories. If you know the strangest stories about the Redskins world, he's tied to them. I'll just say that. And some of them are BS, some of them aren't. But yeah, back to the McLuhan thing. The one thing I didn't see in the article is how far back, because there was a span of time where they're saying she was talking to somebody 40-something times just before the story came out.
Yeah, let me stop you right here. So, by the if you guys want to read about this, the best place to go is The Athletic. There's a story by Daniel Kaplan from November 13th called WFT owner Daniel Snyder targets ex-GM Scott McLuhan's wife in legal action. And it was 44 separate phone calls. So, go ahead.
44 separate phone calls right before that crazy Epstein story, right? So, this isn't back when Scott was getting fired a couple years ago, or during their whole the settlement to because they were claiming that McLuhan owed them money and stuff it's not during that. This is more recent.
The McLuhan stuff was that the Redskins or the Washington franchise fired him for cause, and the cause was being that he was drinking, and so Scott McLuhan filed a grievance against the team that was arbitrated confidentially to determine whether or not he was fired for cause, properly fired for cause or not.
It was a matter of something like $4 million that he was owed, or something like
right, because
it was a
basically
fairly large sum of money.
The rest of his contract would have been paid out if he was not fired for cause. That's the point, and that was arbitrated and is over, and nobody ever learns.
Okay, results. There's no overlap in these timelines between these two lawsuits.
Even if there was, why would Jessica McLuhan be calling the team? It has nothing to do with her.
Or calling this one person in particular who works for the team. Now, the interesting thing to me is they don't name the person, and I would think if it was that same woman who was involved with Shar, possibly, I would think they would just say... She wasn't
with the team at the time, though. She was already gone.
Oh, that's true. Happened. She would have been by then. So they think they had another mole, basically, is what it sounds like, which is interesting. And
well, I'm also sure Dan Snyder would love to stick it to Jessica if he could, too.
Oh, yeah, because if you follow her on social media, she will not... She's not shy about going after Dan Snyder.
As much as Scott McLuhan does not talk, she does all the talking for both of them.
Yeah. She is the PR branch of the McLuhan household. I mean,
she literally is. She advertises herself as McLuhan's spokesman, I think, or something like that.
Right. And, I know a lot of fans, by the way, just can't stand Scott McLuhan now because of his drafts and stuff. I still look at that and I'm like, at least he had a plan for a couple of years.
Yeah,
but that's besides the point.
Yeah, you don't hire an alcoholic who doesn't admit he's an alcoholic as your GM. That's the moral of the story, probably. But
also, maybe if you do hire them, don't have cases of beer in his office and your office, and be okay with that.
It's not exactly being helpful to someone who, even though he never admitted he was an alcoholic, admitted he had a problem.
Right.
He just said, I have it under control, and
Right.
So anyway, so here's the big picture, people. Okay, so Dan Snyder thinks that the Epstein story was fed to the Indian website by a combination of Dwight Schrute, who's his minority partner, and Jessica McLuhan, who's the wife of his former GM, among other people. That's the big picture here, and if they get discovery, you could end up getting into all sorts of things, a lot of which will become public. The NFL doesn't like any of this, for sure.
No. The NFL probably wishes Dan Snyder would, settle all this out of court.
The NFL probably wants to launch Dan Snyder to Mars at this point, would be my guess.
Yes. That being said, they still won't get rid of him. They won't vote him out.
No, because that's a different story. You're talking like Marge Schott territory, and he's almost there, but he's not quite there. Now, if there's a bunch of lawsuits that come out with all sorts of dirt, here's the one thing that the NFL tries to protect is finances, and we're going to get into that with the next half of the Redskins story, or the Washington story, rather. Right. So, I don't know. Does it surprise you that Jessica could possibly do this? Doesn't surprise me at all.
No, it doesn't surprise me. But then again, we're also getting into what I like to call like the QAnon level territory of Dan Snyder's big conspiracy theory, where it's literally everybody's involved with this thing to take him down. Like, I'm surprised that he doesn't think there's like a bunker in Colorado with, all the evidence and,
Well, maybe he does. Here's the thing, though, about it. There's a kernel of truth in this, because this Indian website did not make this up.
Oh, no, I'm not. They're probably the most honest part of this whole story, which is messed up.
Well, I mean, honest in that somebody gave them the information. They were dishonest enough to just publish it without investigating it.
Right.
Oh, by the way, there's the other part of this, which I didn't mention, is the other person involved in this is somebody named Peter Schaefer. Peter Schaefer is an agent who represented McLuhan. He's a part of this discovery mess, too, in one of these discovery lawsuits. And now McLuhan has represented a bunch of people who've gone after the Washington Redskins in the past. The Sua Cravens is one of them. So McLuhan, he's attached to a bunch of people that also hate Washington. Junior Gillette, who hates Washington also.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a QAnon thing in Dan Snyder's mind, but he's got a kernel of truth to this, and there's a reason why there's 44 phone calls between Jessica and the team the day before a story like that drops. He's probably onto something, would be my guess.
Yeah, but I don't know, man. Like, we're also assuming that they can prove that these 44 phone calls happened, and that it's her and...
the proving the calls happen is easy. It's the substance of the calls that isn't easy. You can pull cell phone records and get discovery on records and prove that. The question is...
that's easier to do.
They could be talking about shopping. I mean, she may have a friend in the team, and the friend is just I make something out of thin air. But what if the friend is going through some personal thing, and she was calling him back and forth, had nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein? It could be anything. It seems unlikely, and it seems like it's a pretty big coincidence, which is why there's a discovery lawsuit.
The thing that makes it a red flag is if it's really 44 phone calls. I don't even call my mom 44 times in a month or whatever the timeline is. That's a lot of phone calls between people. And
that's the point. That's exactly the point. 1 or 2 phone calls, sure. Hey, how you doing? Haven't seen you in a while.
And
whatever.
If it's all phone calls, no text messages, that means there's no written record. So, and for those of you who've ever worked in any business where sometimes you maybe don't want something on the record, you do things, over the phone.
I watched The Wire, Alex. I know all about it.
Yes.
So anyway, and just to catch up here also, for the benefit of these people, of the audience, Jessica can't just go lie about this, okay? Because then you're talking about federal perjury charges. So she can't get up there and just completely make up nonsense. She can avoid the question. She could, hypothetically, if she thinks a crime has been committed, she could plead the fifth, which means, it's just the right against self-incrimination. But she can't just get up there and tell a complete nonsensical story to a federal court.
No.
That's a really, really bad idea. That's how you go to jail. So
but there
truth
is
will
still
come
in
out.
Discovery, too, which means, and
this is all discovery. All of this is discovery.
Yeah. One last thing, though, just to give the benefit of the doubt. I also wouldn't put it past Dan Snyder's lawyers just doing a fishing expedition to harass Jessica McLuhan a little.
Well, it's funny that you say the word fishing expedition, because that's actually a term of art in discovery practice that is widely overused. And who's the big the big sports salon business guy that's on Twitter all the time?
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
It's not Darren Ravel, the other one. The one that's attached like Penn State law or something.
Yeah,
but
I would
anyway,
have to look. I would have to.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Not Ravel, right? Is it Ravel?
No, it's the other guy. But it doesn't matter. Point is, he had put out a story a while ago where it was about it. What was it? I can't even remember. It was another lawsuit, and he quoted a discovery response that used the term fishing expedition. And I responded to him back before I quit Twitter and said, hey, you're quoting the most commonly overused discovery excuse ever. And he said, yeah, I know, but it's this other point. But so fishing expedition is a term that we all use in discovery practices to suggest that what the party is doing is just trying to randomly grab whatever information they can that doesn't relate to the lawsuit. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if Dan Snyder is just randomly trying to mess with Jessica McLuhan.
No, I mean, nothing that he does would surprise me.
No, not at this point.
No.
The bigger issue is the connection to Dwight Schrute in this. And we bring this up again because, again, we already told you months ago that, this discovery stuff is connected to Schrute. But the other part of this is that his minority partners now hate him, as we know. They have been trying to sell their shares, as we know, and the other partners are Fred Smith with FedEx, Robert Rathman, who's this sleazy equity guy, and then Dwight Schrute, who's this, among other things, does real estate and some other stuff.
Right.
So they've been trying to sell their 40%, and as you and I talked about, Alex, before, part of the whole name change thing is just a big business play. Maybe we talked about that on this show. I can't remember,
it's. I mean, you've got like a coup civil war thing going on corporately here,
and so FedEx dropped the name change stuff as a part of them. Not that they cared about Native Americans at all. It was a part of trying to get Dan Snyder to sell. So the reason why we bring this up again today is that the minority partners, Smith, Rathman, and Schrute, have filed a lawsuit in Maryland, I believe, in federal court, about the sale because they have found a buyer. And by the way, the story on this one, if you want to read it, is from it's from the Richmond newspaper. Hold on, I didn't have it open. Okay, it's from Michael Phillips, the beat writer, Richmond Times-Dispatch, called "Fight Over Washington Football Ownership Spills into Federal Court. Dan Snyder accused of blocking sale." This is from November 20th. Okay, so yeah, it is in Maryland. So what happened here is the the minority owners gave notice to Dan Snyder. They found a buyer. Why did they do this? It's because the owner has an option
To refuse,
and a right of first refusal on the sale, meaning that they can't sell the shares without him saying, no, I don't want to buy them. You go sell them. And Dan Snyder's response to this was, I'm going to exercise my right of first refusal option on Smith's and Rothman's shares, but there's no way in hell I'm giving Dwight Schrute a penny. That was Dan Snyder's response. The reason they filed a lawsuit is they said, hey, you can't refuse 2/3 of this because it's being offered as a package. And so the lawsuit is whether Dan Snyder can exercise his options on 2 of the 3 of them, but not 1 of them. That's the lawsuit. The reason this is important is that this is going to put all sorts of NFL finances into the public record, which is why the Washington Post tried to get the information and was told that the records are sealed. So, but this is the big debate going on. Alex, your thoughts?
Well, I'm fascinated by a couple things with this story. A couple of the numbers. One, I'd always been told part of the reason Dan hadn't done this right away was he doesn't have that kind of money lying around to buy these guys out. So how is he really, you
finance it? Nobody but Amazon and Google dropped $900 million in cash.
Right.
You finance it.
Right. Well, okay, so even then, I was told, or I had heard from other beat writers and stuff like that they just don't have that kind of money laying around, even if they finance or what.
It's a problem. That's probably why I didn't want to do it, because you have to finance $900 million, so the debt service per year is just enormous, and he's getting nothing out of it.
He's trying to save up $900 million to buy a new stadium at some point too.
And by the way, if you do the math, which I did, on $900 million, that comes out to a valuation like $2.25 billion, roughly. And that's about $1 billion, more than $1 billion less than what Forbes valued the team.
Yeah, and so I actually looked into that part myself.
Well, then go ahead.
Because the Forbes valued it at $3.5 billion or so, or 3.4 or something like that.
Right.
At 2.25, do you know where that puts them? 30th in the league in terms of value.
Yeah, now it should be said this, though, that part of the reason why it's undervalued is that it's only 40%, so your minority not only are you a minority shareholder, the NFL views you as nothing. The NFL's rule is that they appoint one principal owner, that's Dan Snyder, and so you have no say in the NFL decisions, and Snyder can just ignore you and outvote you in any decision. So You're just a silent partner, and you don't find a lot of billionaires willing to be silent partners.
Well, I mean, it's basically just a return on investment kind of situation where you're guaranteed 40% of the profits. But I mean, as we saw, part of the reason this whole situation got as ugly as it has is because Dan withheld paying Smith, Rathman, and Shar their cut. Was it last year or the year before?
I believe it was the year before, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, he basically said, I'm not paying you, and he didn't really tell them.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, he has a right to withhold. It was a distribution is what you're talking about, and he can withhold a distribution, but he didn't even bother to tell him, that was going to happen. And interestingly enough, the buyers is a equity firm called Clear Lake Capital. And the people behind Clear Lake Capital are I'm going to pronounce this wrong horribly, but Bedad Egbali, it looks like, and Jose Feliciano, not the singer Jose Feliciano, but some other Jose Feliciano. Now, they're both minorities. And so part of Phillips' story in here is how the NFL will probably automatically approve those two only because they're minorities. And as we know, the NFL is making this big push to get more minority investors in leadership in the NFL. So I don't know a thing about either of those two, except Jose wrote a bad New Year's song, a Merry Christmas song.
Well, no, again, different guy, right?
I'm just kidding. Yeah. I'm just joking.
Well, funny enough, the person people are making more of a story about is his wife, who's also involved in this firm, because she is was a songwriter, singer, music producer, I believe. And Princeton grad and local. Like, she's from the D.C., Maryland area. Was Miss Baltimore in the 90s or something like that?
Which, say, if you are a Washington Redskin fan or a Washington football fan, just pray to the God of your choice that this gets approved, because normally the minority shareholders are first up in the eyes of the NFL to buy a team. And so if there's a person in the ownership group that has a Washington connection, that is more likely than that they won't move the team.
Right. There's that, and the fact that, like you said, the NFL really does want to have a minority owner, not counting Khan in Jacksonville.
Khan,
yeah. Let's just say black or Hispanic. They probably want a black or Hispanic owner.
I think they would take. I mean, minority in today's world means anybody who's not Caucasian, and they would take anybody who's not Caucasian.
Yeah,
I think at this point.
Yeah, they probably would. Because right now it's WASPs and Jewish guys, and that's about it.
Yeah. So it's interesting. This is tied to the defamation thing, because the whole point of this lawsuit is that Snyder just saying, "I'm not giving Dwight Schrute any money. Go screw yourself." That's what he's saying. And if he gets a court order, this is a ton of money involved here, so he's probably going to appeal it. So this, and you could, even if you don't, there's probably not a Supreme Court issue here, but you could definitely appeal it to the federal appellate court. So you're talking, this could go on for years.
Well, and the interesting thing about this, the finances, how much, and like you said, the reason it's partly undervalued is because you're getting a minority ownership. But that said, you're talking about $500 million undervalued here, which that's a big number. How much of it is Dan blocking it because he doesn't want people thinking, well, the Washington football team's really only maybe worth 2.5 to, just under 3.
Well, it's to his benefit.
Middle of the pack in terms of that.
Yeah, no, and if you do the math on $3.5 billion, it should be $1.4 billion.
Right.
So that's where your Alex's $500 billion number comes from. That's probably part of it.
Right.
That could be part of it. Why, agree to something that's undervalued and make your asset look worse than it is. But frankly, Dan, you're responsible for the asset losing value.
Oh, absolutely.
It is your fault.
Losing value relative to the rest of the league, we should say. Let's not forget, they bought this team for $800 million. So
yeah, you did. But, at one point in time, the Washington Redskins franchise was the second most valuable property in the NFL behind the Dallas Cowboys. They're still in the top 10, but...
Yeah, and it was at one time like the third most valuable sports franchise in the world.
Right, behind the Cowboys.
It was the Cowboys and the Yankees, right?
Yeah, and then there's some Euro soccer teams up there.
Oh, yeah, Manchester's up there. Ferrari and F1 is up there. Those were the marquee franchises in the world.
Yeah, but in terms of U.S. sports franchise, it was always the Yankees and the Cowboys and the Yankees and the Washington Redskins.
Right.
And the Lakers are up there, and there's others. But point is, that could be part of it. But I think the other part of it is the connection to the defamation lawsuit. Dan just does not want to pay this guy his share of, whatever his share of $900 million is, when he thinks he's the one that fed.
He owned the small share, from what I read. Shar owns 15% of the 40. The other two guys own the rest of it. Yes,
that'd be $135 million then, because that's 90. Yeah, it'd be $135 million would be 10% of $900 million. So does Dan Snyder want to give Dwight Schrute $135 million? No, he does not. That's 15%, not 90. So that 10% would be $90 million. So if it's 15%, $135 million.
Right. I knew where you were coming from there. So, yeah, Shar owns the smallest percentage. That's the interesting thing. I don't think he wants to pay any of it. I'm sure that he made the counteroffer insincerely to begin with, because, like we said...
Well, I think if he's boxed into a corner,
yeah,
he'd rather own it himself than not, than have some random people he doesn't even know be involved with his team.
Right, but I don't think he can finance buying these guys out and then finance buying a stadium. Realistically, then you're talking...
Well, no, the stadium's easier to go, because the stadium is going to be secured by the stadium. You know, you don't, and the NFL won't let you put up the team as an
collateral.
asset to no.
Yeah.
No. So that's not, no, I think I'm sure he doesn't want to have that much debt service for sure, and that's part of it, but it's not that he would have to put the team up to finance a stadium.
I mean,
that
was more my thinking is like the amount of debt that he'd have on.
It's a ton of debt.
You're talking about debt on, let's say they go on the cheap with the stadium and it's still $1 billion.
Then you have another $900 million debt service. So you're talking
doubling
pushing
your debt.
$2 billion in debt service. He becomes basically a new owner.
Right.
You know, again, so that's certainly not what he wants. So that's the point. I think we need to move on to another story here.
Yeah.
So the point here is stay tuned because there's more to come. This ownership story probably isn't going anywhere anytime soon, but I think more of the details of the defamation part will come out as time goes on, and it will certainly be interesting. Hollywood needs to make a movie about this.
Well, they got to do the Law and Order thing where it's like his name is Schman Schmeider. It's not
because the NFL will never give consent to use their trademarks.
And he owns the Northern Virginia Indians or something like that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, okay, we're going to move on here to something that is a little bit less nefarious. And there is another story here, and of course, I lost it. Here it is. Okay, once again, The Athletic. We're usually mining Bleacher Report for some of these stories, but today it's The Athletic. There's a story from November 18th called Temperature Check, 10 pandemic changes to sports business that are here to stay. So let's start there, and I'll tell you what, I'm just going to run through the list here, and then you can react.
Read the 10 headlines there.
Okay, paperless tickets, cashless venues, athletes' off-field business ventures, remote TV production, venue cleaning, playoff expansion, CBA changes to account for shortened seasons, interactive concessions, health checks, and limited media access. So, Alex, tell me your thoughts on these, because I've got a ton.
I've got a ton of thoughts on them. So let me start with listing a couple of these that really don't have anything to do with the pandemic. And these are happening anyway, so people need to accept it. And let me start with the obvious ones. The athletes' off-field ventures, we were seeing that starting to happen years
We did a story on this show about it a couple of shows ago.
Yeah. But we've seen this for years now. Guys are getting enough money when they get that big contract where it only makes sense for them to start doing that. And the pandemic may have pushed guys more that way because they need that revenue. But I thought this is going to happen anyway because athletes are all millionaires now. Even if you're a late round draft pick, you're making $500,000 a year or something like that. So
yeah, if you're smart, you're doing something with the money.
Right. Don't blow it all on cars or whatever. Yeah.
Right.
There's a great quote The Rock has in that show Ballers, and I can't say it because it's not safe for the.
It just edit yourself.
Yes. If it flies, F's, or goes fast, you got to lease it out or something like that.
There you go. That's pretty good.
Basically, boats, women, cars, airplanes, don't buy them. that was his mantra. Buy houses. Houses get you ROI in the end.
There you go.
That's my advice as somebody who's terrible with money. Anyway,
and you don't make any money either.
No. Well, I make a decent living.
You make
but I don't
a regular middle class living. You are not a baller.
No, I am not. So that was gonna happen no matter what. The remote TV production stuff, we've been going that way, already. I say that as an AV person, somebody who lives in a studio for my job.
We talked about this on the last show too.
Yeah.
IJB show. The remote TV production stuff, I honestly didn't know they were doing it. I really didn't.
You wouldn't. And I know a guy who used to work for Comcast back in the day. They were already doing it when he was there 10 years ago.
Well, I read an interview with Mike Golick, Sr., this just a couple days ago, as a matter of fact, and a lot of it was about, Mike and Mike and how, and ESPN kind of did him dirty with the Golick and Wingo stuff.
Sure.
Which is interesting in and of itself, but they actually, Golick has been doing, he's tied to ESPN through the end of the year contractually, and so they said, hey, what are you doing? He said he's calling college games, and he's been doing it from the ESPN studios.
Right. Now, I think to an extent, you will see us go back to some people being there in the stadiums and stuff, but
big games.
Yeah, big games. Well, for color guys, you'll actually want them there in person.
I think it would almost be easier. I mean, we're not announcers, but it'd be almost easier if you were in an ESPN studio and had access to every camera angle in front of you. It might be easier than like binoculars from a booth.
Well, it depends on the stadium. Some stadiums really put these guys in a bad spot too.
You were right. Yeah.
To tie back to the Washington football team, theirs is apparently in like one of the back corners, and you can't see anything. That's why they get the calls wrong so often. Yeah.
To the surprise of no one.
No. But anyway, playoff expansion, they were just looking for an excuse. We all knew that.
Right.
Let's see.
Well, to say on that one, Major League Baseball's playoff expansion in particular was wildly successful. It saved them. Baseball basically added a round.
Yeah. But
and it was a huge success.
Let me also say in that regard, I never liked their one-game play-in wild card to begin with that they had the last couple of years. Just expanding it makes more sense.
Just do a whole round. If you're do
exactly. At least do like a 3-game series if you're going to make it. Well,
Major League Baseball had room to expand and not have bad teams in the playoffs. Like the NFL really doesn't.
No.
You expand the NFL playoffs, you're going to get losing teams, and nobody wants to see that.
No, you don't want that. And
basketball too.
Basketball, if anything, needs to shrink it.
Yes.
So those ones, I think, like I said, that really doesn't. The pandemic just accelerated something, or it was a good excuse for them to do stuff. Same with paper tickets, the cashless thing at venues. Like we were always going this way. It just doesn't make sense.
I hate the cashless thing. I hate that. I like cash. I do not trust credit cards.
Yeah, I know.
I would rather give cash.
Very, and me as somebody who lives in a city, I don't carry cash. Period. Like carrying cash is just an excuse to get yourself mugged. So
I think I would be a good drug dealer in that regard because I kind of like cash.
Yeah, you would. You would make a very good drug dealer in that. Just, you got to be careful with it because, someone will roll you.
And I don't really like paperless tickets either, to be perfectly honest. Because that requires me to put credit cards online somewhere, and I don't like doing that. So I actually like paper tickets, and I don't. So the paper ticket thing bothers me less. The cashless venue bothers me a lot.
Well, I mean, and this is more just from other world political stuff that I read. The globe is eventually going to go cashless. That's something that's just apparently going to happen. That's what people are planning. Just everything's going to be online. Currency will stop being printed, but that's like 50 to 100 years from now. So, I just see paperless tickets and cashless venues as a very early start on that. So,
I like to address two of them that
we didn't mention.
Really caught my eye.
Yeah.
One of them is venue cleaning.
Sure.
Now, I'm not anti-cleaning, so don't misunderstand me. I'm pro-cleaning.
You are a very clean person from what I've seen.
Yeah, and I'm not OCD about it or anything. I just, I would prefer clean.
Right.
But what I find interesting is now we're cleaning stuff, implying that it wasn't good enough before, and now we're making it good enough. So despite the presence of the coronavirus, this is something that teams and venue owners should have been doing in the first place. Mm-hmm. Before. And the other one is health checks. Now, I'm just going to sit here and tell you, I'm about half an inch from being an anti-masker myself already because I'm sick and tired of it. I'm not going to throw a hissy fit in public about it, but I'm about ready to just be done with it. And there's no way I'm going to go into a venue with people taking temperatures, of my head in the future. I will not do that. I think that's the one of this that is way too invasive, and the public can't and shouldn't accept.
I'll be honest, when it comes to that one, I expect that, once the pandemic's over, whenever that is, that will go away.
It's going to be over like the end of January, Alex, let's be honest.
Well, I think it'll be summer. That's my guess.
I think it'll be over the day after the inauguration, but that's politics.
I don't think it's that at this point, but
fair enough.
Regardless,
but go ahead.
I think the health checks won't stay like they're predicting. The ones that I think won't stay in general, their point about the CBA is a good one. That CBAs will start planning for contingencies better.
Let me talk about this real fast.
Yeah,
what this is about here is most contracts of any type have got what's called a force majeure clause, and that basically says if an act of God happens, and it usually has examples: hurricanes, fires, earthquakes, something that prevents the business from going on, then the contract's tolled, meaning stopped.
Mm-hmm.
What the CBA in particular none of these CBAs ever addressed was what happens if the season can't go on for health reasons.
Right.
That has never been in any of these. And so now that we are going through this pandemic, future CBAs will address this because they had to make it all up on the fly. It almost cost baseball their season.
Right.
Because they couldn't agree on the money. So the future CBAs will have pandemic provisions in it, even if another pandemic doesn't happen for another 100 years. It will happen eventually again.
Right.
It's just a matter of when.
And, I think that I've always said this about the NFL and other, like, there should just be a file sitting in your office somewhere as the NFL or MLB where you just maybe spend a week, somebody comes up with every disaster scenario they can think of, and here's our plan. Like, there should just be a file there. You never actually try them. But, I use the example as a joke. Apparently, at one point, some part of the military came up with a zombie disaster plan.
Well, speaking of someone who's a military professional, I can tell you that buried in the bowels of the Pentagon is a plan for absolutely everything you could possibly think of. I wouldn't personally swear to the zombie apocalypse thing, but it would not surprise me if someone has drawn up a zombie apocalypse plan because it is that level. They have plans for every contingency, national security contingency you could possibly dream up. Somebody in the Pentagon has a file on it.
I don't remember if this was somebody telling me this in person or not, but they said it wasn't like a serious, like, it was more just done as a mental exercise. What will we do if this kind of thing happened?
Yeah.
And then they wrote it down, and it's in that bowels of the Pentagon, like you said. The NFL should have that. They should have, like, all right, what do we do if there's a zombie apocalypse? Do we, do
we play or not play?
Right. Or do we wall off the stadiums and turn them into giant siege bases?
A zombie might be harder to tackle.
Yeah, well, they're slower, generally speaking.
But they're undead, so you could break an arm off and it would continue.
Yeah.
Think about like Game of Thrones. The zombies in Game of Thrones, just you could decapitate it and it was still going. So
that
true. Might be a perfect like running back. Zombie running back.
Right. But I think that all these sports, they should. That'll be good for them if they start putting these plans or contingencies into the CBAs and into their agreements with sponsors and things like that. Because remember, we heard massive issues with the sponsors too, that they were having to do all these kind of like make goods, and the sponsors weren't happy with it.
Yeah, because nobody, like you said, nobody thought about this beforehand.
No.
Now they will.
The only other thing that really stood out to me in that list was the limited media access. Which
we got hit by personally.
Yeah, we did. We got
limited.
I hope that they're wrong. They're thinking that this is going to be here to stay. They just won't let the media around the players anymore. Won't let you in the locker room. Won't let you have a lot of people covering practices or whatever. Like, I hope that that's not true because I think, America loves sports. Like, more than any country. Sorry, Europe and your love of soccer. We love football and baseball and basketball more than you love soccer.
And golf.
And golf. Even golf. And I want to, burn down every golf course. But, that's aside the point.
It's very popular amongst a certain group of people.
Right.
Listen, in Philip's article cites European soccer as an example.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know this, but what he says is, to quote him, this is a quote, "The pandemic may help transform media access to what is typical in European soccer limited." I didn't realize it was limited in Euro soccer.
I didn't either.
I mean, you talk about ego in basketball players.
Right.
The ego in European soccer players is just off the charts obnoxious. And so it doesn't surprise me that it would be sort of an attitude of we're too good to talk to the media because there's no bigger narcissist in the NFL, in the world of sports than European soccer players.
Yeah,
that doesn't surprise me.
And we talk to a lot of NFL guys. I'm always amazed by how few of them are like that. There have been a few.
We've been big shotted once or twice, but most of the time people will talk to us.
Yeah. I'm not going to name any names, but
no.
there maybe two who've really big shotted us.
Yeah, I'd say there's
either
two.
saying, no, I'm not doing your little podcast, or, they come on and they're jerks. But
yeah, we've had a couple times.
Yeah.
The one that really bothered me on the other one I should have mentioned earlier is interactive concessions. I hate this idea with a passion. I hate this with the passion of 1,000 suns.
Well, I mean,
the fire of 1,000 suns.
It's just like your hate of paperless tickets and cashless
It's worse
venues.
though, because this is like sensors. So what they're talking about here is you walk into the concession area. It knows it's tracking your credit card, and it knows you're there through sensors, and you just grab your hot dog and walk away, and it automatically knows this and charges you. That's what interactive concession is.
Yeah,
So you don't have
and
to
I think it's actually through your phone, not your credit card.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah. I hate this idea. Do not track me. I do not want someone to know I'm buying a hot dog. That really bothers me to the point where I would probably refuse to participate in it and just starve.
Sure.
That's bothers me that much.
I think it's a very weird concept. I know Whole Foods and Amazon have started doing that, but I haven't tried it yet.
There's Amazon grocery stores somewhere apparently.
Those are Whole Foods.
Oh, is that what
Amazon
it is?
owns Whole Foods, yes.
Okay, I didn't realize that and you just walk in, you get your stuff, and you walk out, and it knows what you grab.
Right,
and
you basically
when
you leave through a turnstile, it'll tell you this is it, and here's your name, and there you go.
Yeah, I would just refuse. I will not do that. It's bad enough that Kroger's tracking my purchases, which I hate that too.
Yeah, although I do like the 2-for-1 deals and stuff that come with it. Like they incentivize it at least. Usually.
Yeah, I know, but there's a big database of every pack of chicken you ever bought is on somebody's computer.
Well, here's my little dirty secret, Steve. The phone numbers I use for all of them is not my actual phone number anymore.
Oh, I put fake. I do too. But what's scary about it, Alex, is that I gave fake phone numbers and fake address and everything. Somehow they attached my real address to it.
Oh, those jerks.
All of a sudden I started getting stuff from them in the mail.
Oh.
And so somehow they figured it out and changed my address. Whatever nonsense I made up and fed them is gone, and now they have my real info.
I don't know how they do that. Well,
I don't know.
I got predictions or guesses.
Unless a family member changed it and didn't realize it, and that could have happened. Because in my little card, I made it some stupid address up.
Right.
Out of thin
Mine
air.
don't even have my real name on them. Most of them.
Yeah, I don't either. Sometimes I'll put like Fred Smith or something.
Yeah. Well, you've got a million fake names that I know.
I do. Yeah, you know this for sure. I gave you a fake name when we first met.
Yeah. You've used like 4 fake names on me over the years. It's pretty.
And I'm using a fake name now.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact. Hint: Steve Thomas is not my name.
No. It's a James Bond name. It's you picked a name that's so generic people can think it's real.
There you go. Okay, so anyway, this is the health check thing, or this is the 10 items that may stay at post-pandemic.
Right. Before we move on, let me ask you one
go
question.
ahead.
Is there any one thing that you think has changed for the better?
Cleaning.
Cleaning. That's the one.
Oh, and it kind of relates to also like you order pizza.
Right.
And I know you're a pizza snob, Alex, but I'm not. And so I'll order like Pizza Hut or Papa John's or something.
You misunderstand. I'm not a pizza snob. I'll eat Papa John's or Pizza Hut. I understand the difference and appreciate like really good pizza as opposed to those as well.
I don't at all.
Yeah.
If it's pizza, I'll eat it. Yeah. But, they make a point to say, we're now sealing the thing for your protection.
Oh, the little stickers?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like
Weren't
that.
you protecting me before? Were you
Nope.
spitting on the pizza and slobbering all over it?
No, they were
beforehand, and now
stealing your
you're not?
fries and stealing, a wing here and there. That's what they were doing.
Yeah, it's just odd. So, but I think the cleanliness thing is a good thing because that's something they should have been doing anyway.
Sure.
I'm not a germaphobe or anything, but a lot of people are and have a reason to be, about it. And the stadiums look pretty gross. Let's be honest.
Oh, I mean, if you've ever walked through the aisle of a baseball game after the end of the game,
it's horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even I thought that was horrible and nothing gross.
Every other step, it's peanut shells, popcorn. Oh, look, there's somebody
But it's more
left.
than that, though.
Yeah.
What they're talking about now is like spraying down the seats.
Yeah, that too. I understand.
Which they should have been doing that anyway. So I think that's a step for the right. Step for the good.
I mean, I think little things like that will be good. You're right.
I could pretty much do without all the rest of this stuff, though, to be honest. Okay, let's move on here because we're kind of running out of time. But
Sure.
we do have a fun story here to finish up with. And I have a weirdly cynical take on this, so I'm interested to hear what you say.
Right.
Wrigley Field has been declared a federal historic landmark.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the right? Did I just screw up
the
exact term on this?
No,
okay, federal historic landmark. Alex, I know you were excited about this, or you have thoughts on stadiums and in the history of stadiums. So, what are your thoughts on the fact that Wrigley Field has now been declared a national historic landmark?
I mean, I do have thoughts on this because I think in every major city there are iconic stadiums. And, this isn't... I take a historical, big-picture perspective. If you were to go to Rome, what's one of the things you got to see? It's the Colosseum. And,
yes.
1,000 years from now, the ruins of Wrigley Field are going to be the equivalent of that to some people. Not everybody, but to some people, when America's empire is long gone, they'll see these and they'll be like, this is like what people did for entertainment. That's a historical...
1,000 years from now, the ruins of Wrigley Field will be where people will teleport in and beam in from a spaceship to do their tour of the former city of Chicago.
Right.
They will see the ruins of Wrigley Field and go, look, this is where these Americans played baseball.
Right, exactly. Just like Tom Cruise in that movie, Oblivion, where he's standing in the middle of what was, I think, Shea Stadium or Giant Stadium.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was some stadium.
Yeah. I don't remember which. And he's making up some championship game that happened there 100 years from now.
It was a real game that he was talking about.
I thought he was talking about one from the future.
No, I think it was a real game.
Oh, okay.
Maybe not. I can't remember.
Yeah,
but
it was a weird-ass movie. But so I appreciate that they're doing this with Wrigley. There are certain stadiums that should never be torn down, in my mind.
Well, what I've heard is that FedEx Field is next on the list.
Yeah, I don't think so. I'm going to guess not. But I will say, from a local perspective, RFK is that kind of hollowed ground stadium for us here in D.C. I know people
for
outside...
another year. For another year before it gets bulldozed.
Yeah, and that's getting bulldozed. But you know what I'm saying? There are some iconic local sports moments that happen there, and it's also unique in that it's one of the last multi-purpose stadiums that was ever built and actually built well, and because most of them were done terribly. But Fenway. Could you imagine if they ever tore down Fenway?
Fenway is a national historic landmark itself.
Right, and it should be. So should have been Yankee Stadium before they tore it down, frankly.
But now that we've heard your positive, you're waxing philosophical about this, I'm a natural cynic, as you know.
Right.
And so would you like to hear my cynical view of this?
Sure.
All this is really doing is giving the Ricketts family tax benefits.
Okay.
They don't care a bit about the stadium being an historic landmark. They were never going to bulldoze Wrigley Field anyway, because the city of Chicago would riot even more than they are now and start shooting up people even more than they are. So Wrigley Field was never going to leave. All this is really doing is giving them federal tax benefits and federal money to put in their pocket. Okay, that's all this is about. That's my cynic's view of it.
Yeah, although that does also mean they have to upkeep it and keep it to whatever the standard is now, right? Isn't that kind of the double-edged
that's
sword?
a part of it. Yeah. But again, they're getting tax breaks for this.
Sure.
So they're going to figure out how to do the minimum, which they were probably doing anyway.
They are the Ricketts family. That's kind of their hallmark.
Yes, it is. It is. I still say the best story we ever did on the show, you weren't here, Alex, was our expose on how the Ricketts family came to acquire the Cubs. It was fascinating. And it really exposed them for being a bunch of lunatics. More than anything.
Well, and last time I was here, we were talking about how they fired their entire staff, just to save $50 or whatever it was.
Yeah, because they have tons of money, tons of debt. But anyway, so that's my cynic's view on this: is that nobody cared. Nobody in the Ricketts family is interested in protecting the historic nature of it. All they really want is federal tax money.
No, and you know what? That's probably true about them. But I stand by my belief that, from a historical perspective, we should value these places anyway.
Well, let's name some. You already said Yankee Stadium, which is gone, should have been, and I agree, because a lot happened there.
Right.
And not only just on the field, but who was who's the baseball player who died?
Lou Gehrig. Yeah.
Lou Gehrig made his famous speech there. Also, kinds of historic stuff happened there.
Tons of famous things have happened there over the years.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But that's gone now, so it doesn't matter. Fenway, certainly. Wrigley Field is one. The Coliseum in Los Angeles.
Yeah, the LA Coliseum. That's a big one. The interesting thing to me, when it comes to football, it's really mostly college stadiums that I would say would qualify. Like, I'm sorry, the NFL, like, they've destroyed almost every stadium.
They replace them too fast.
Yeah. I mean, every 30 years they're ripping one down.
Well, Lambeau Field would be the one. But not much historic ever happened in Lambeau Field other than the Packers.
Yeah. Although I would say, what's the Chicago Stadium? Soldier Field. Although they gutted it and rebuilt it at one point.
Yeah, it's the old Soldier Field in name only now, basically.
Right. And I think they kept the facade out front.
They did.
Yeah.
They kept the facade out front and basically, and they added a whole new level and
UFO or whatever they call it.
Yeah, and they added a bunch of luxury box suites and stuff.
Right. So there's not a lot of NFLs. Notre Dame, though, if you're going to name college stadiums, that that would be
there's
up there.
Another one.
But
I agree.
Like I said, not a lot of football ones. It's really baseball, I think, that you're going to have those.
Well, if you want to name, I'm a Dodger fan, so I would say Dodger Stadium, but the truth is it only goes back to the 60s,
right,
so it probably doesn't qualify.
Oh, you want a little fun historical tidbit? A friend of mine who's from Brooklyn, or I should say coworker, really. I didn't know this. Did you know that the original home plate from Dodger Stadium in Brooklyn is still there?
No, I mean still in Ebbets Field in Brooklyn?
Where it was, in Ebbets Field. Ebbets Field has been torn down, but there was a apartment complex or something put up around where Ebbets Field used to be, and they've kept the home plate and the grass and stuff from that original Ebbets Field inside the apartment complex's little park area in the middle.
Oh my gosh, that's the greatest thing I've ever heard.
Right? Isn't that awesome?
That's
because
awesome.
it's the plate Jackie Robinson slid across.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
That is so great.
When it comes to history, that awesomeness that you feel, that's why I think you got to keep some of these places.
Yeah. You're not wrong. So we're out of time, though. We could wax philosophical about these stadiums all day long, but we have come to the end of another episode of It's Just Business. Please check out all of our normal stuff on the Hogstar. We've got Seasons of Discontent, which is Rick Snyder's look on all things Washington, D.C. sports and life. Alex and I will be back with well, for you guys, we will be back with a Thanksgiving
preview. Right?
Post-Thanksgiving. No, it will. We don't know when we're going to publish this, given it's Thanksgiving Day.
Yeah.
We'll have to figure that out. We'll be back with another Hogstar episode about something.
Yeah, we got like 8 podcasts to publish in like 2 days.
Yeah, I know. We need to figure all that out more than we did. I just realized we hadn't thought this through well.
That's all right. We always muddle through it.
There you go. That's the end. We will see you next time on another episode of It's Just Business.